Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. 4 things on my list today. And most of what I'm talking about today is about 2 of my students. Not that they're that active, but that I treat everyone out there when I'm talking about being a better instructor. I'm acting as an instructor to students in the vein of Joe's explanation that he sees the people that comes to him as students. So, my first title in quotes is, I get this. 3 words. I get this. And that comes from a student who liked what I had to say, and if you're watching, thank you. And what I want to say back to you right away is, and that's the reason I'm bringing this up, is, what do you get? You know, what is it that you're getting? And to what extent can I reinforce that or further illuminate that, or is there any need to? And see, that's the great thing about getting that kind of feedback, because as a human being, I have a point of view, and in sharing that point of view, it's great when someone says, I get that, I get it. And which takes me to number 2. You know, it's just the beginning of much more to come, I suspect, because I believe there's something to get, and it's always humbling and gratifying when someone comes forth and says, well, I got an email that says light bulb moment. You know, what does that mean? Light bulb moment. And words in the email were about the sensation, and that they get it and understand it. That you get it and you understand it, because I think you're listening to this. And that's just so cool. Somehow brings peace in that what I feel I'm putting out there, someone says, oh, they get it. And in regards to there being a sensation that you can get it or sense it, that you get the sensation, and that you understand the sensation, when you say fascinating, I just hear it said in the spirit of how the TV version of Spock used to say it. Fascinating. And so in that regard, I'm fond of saying that MMP is an ideal that you can feel. And I'm fine with saying that Pilates is an ideal that you can feel, but a lot of Pilates that's represented out there has no acquaintance with this point of view. So number 3 is Kentucky Fried Pilates. And in the same world that I'm projecting a point of view that you said you get it, and you like the fact, I think, that you get it, I see a very good video of an exercise using the reformer equipment to target a specific muscular area. Okay? And that's what I mean by Kentucky Fried Pilates, is where the approach is pieces and parts, and the equipment is really good for addressing pieces and parts. And so it's up to you as the Pilates instructor to be aware of the spectrum of interpretation and use and implementation of movement that comes under the title of, or the label of, Pilates, right? So number four is about, the title is Joseph Pilates, the messenger and his message. And that came from Cecilia. And her comments about my comments about Joe's birthday being yesterday, I think, the 9th. And I think today is the 10th. And recently it's been interesting that by sharing a bunch of original footage of Joe that I've been familiar with for a long time, and now seeing splashing over the social media that I'm connected to, and others that have not seen any of that or want to see that, and in sharing that, it's amazing how much that still gets shared and pushed out to more people. And because from my own point of view, whatever I profess is my message, and it not being welcome leaves reason to interpret or see, kill the messenger to avoid the message. But therein, Cecilia, you helped me realize that Joseph Pilates is the messenger. And it's his message. And all I'm doing is pointing to that. Right? Now, in me pointing, that's the message, but the reality is that Joseph Pilates is the messenger. And his message is the choreography of his mat work, the definition of his method, and for MMP it's critical to include that contrology develops the body uniformly. That's pivotal to what matters and how you get there within the view of MMP. Okay? There's 10,000 other views. Each of them is legitimate as the next. All I have is the ability to illuminate my point of view, which not only illuminates, it explains the method. I don't have to know much about the man. I have his book, and I'm lucky to have other original material, but just from his book alone, it's in there. And the more original material you see, if you see it in big enough chunks to allow what's there to be obvious, which isn't, see, with stuff that's pervade, you only see glimpses of time sequences, glimpses of time, or short clips. The more you let the camera run, the more obvious it is. So, I'm just so happy that you give me feedback that you got this, that you get it. You get this. I get this. Because hopefully I'm doing a job where enough times on the merry-go-round, right? You get familiar with it to the point of what? To the point where you fall into it or you realize, oh, I get this. This makes sense. And that's why the saying mark for the brand, this is my trademark, and that represents a brand of Pilates called Michael Miller Pilates. And the saying mark that goes with the brand is that Michael Miller Pilates makes sense. It makes sense that you can feel, and it makes sense in your mind, in your thinking. It makes sense. Not because it makes sense that somebody else tells you it does, but because it makes sense to you. Like from your sensation, you're much more open to embrace what intellectually makes sense, to coincide with what makes sense physically. So MMP and CT are true identifications that you can get. And hopefully in getting them, it will improve the way you embrace your own training, but facilitate your students as well, because this is about helping your students learn Pilates or do Pilates. And from the MMP point of view, fundamentally that is to help them get it too. Right? Then people will flock to you, my impression, my experience, because they know you're not trying to lord over them what you know that they don't, and assume an aura of mystique and nobleness and just all I have is one thing to point out, one thing to profess, and one thing to profess. I say that, and that's that I have identified two things: core nutension and the ideal within Joe's original work, or an explanation of Joe's original work that is ideal, that fits the evidence, and is understandable. You can get it both sensationally and intellectually. I hope that's what you mean when you say you get it. All right. Satisfying to hear that transmission is getting through. Because life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain and add to and to direct your thinking. Geist.